Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. Now that fall is officially here and wheat and canola planting is well underway, farmers are starting to think about nitrogen levels in their fields. So today we begin with some advice from our Extension soil nutrient specialist. With fall here, Enrich Strips are back in season, and the benefits are better than ever. These high nitrogen strips can determine a field's need for nitrogen throughout the year, saving producers time and money.
We use this Enrich Strip as a piece of litmus paper, you might say, in a field. We're going to watch it during the year. If it shows up, where if that strip of nitrogen shows up in the field greener than everything else, we know it's time to apply nitrogen.
And how that's done is completely up to you.
Commonly, people are using their pre-plant applicators, whether that's an anhydrous applicator, a liquid rig, or a dry spinner spreader. And easily enough, you can just double up. Let's say you're applying 40 pounds of nitrogen to the field with an anhydrous applicator. You just make a second pass over an area and bring that up to 80, and you have your Enrich Strip. Many people also will go to the co-op and rent a urea spreader for a day and run over their fields, just a single pass over the field, applying 40 to 60 pounds of nitrogen across all their fields and getting it done. Another option for an Enrich Strip applicator is using a four-wheeler ATV or UTV with a liquid tank on the back. Many people will use a 10-foot boom and use streamer nozzles to direct the nitrogen into the soil or in through the residue.
Enrich strips are generally 10 feet wide and 100 yards long, but depending on your field, you may need to make some adjustments.
The more variable a field is, the longer the strip should be, so you can see that variability as it goes. If you go from a good area to a poor area, or from a bottom ground to a side slope. If you have a very homogeneous field or a field that has one soil type and you're basically cutting the same grain across the field, you can shorten it up. When you have multiple soil types in the field or a larger field, many producers are breaking it into multiple Enrich strips. So you may have a small one on the south end and a small one on the north end, so you can look at both areas and make judgment calls on that.
Enrich strips are not just for grain-only wheat. Producers can use them for dual purpose or graze-out wheat as well, with a few application adjustments.
One of the adjustments you'd make with dual purpose or graze out is a higher upfront rate. The grain only rate would be 40 to 50 pounds of nitrogen, but since we're pulling off forage and hopefully a great deal of forage, we would have to up that Enrich Strip rate to 100 pounds or better to make sure there's enough in and you don't go deficient. When you're grazing and going to a dual purpose, graze and grain, you need to pull off the cattle about a week before application. We need time for that Enrich Strip to recover. Some people decide not to pull off because they want the cattle out there as long as possible, so you can enclose around the Enrich Strip. Get an enclosure, a hay ring in the strip and one outside of the strip is good enough, and let that be out there for a week. It needs to be grazed throughout most of the season, but it needs a week of recovery. That forage has to recover. For graze out, there are people that use the Enrich Strip for graze out, and they just watch it much like a forage system. We can still take the readings with the sensor. We can still make a rate recommendation, but I highly recommend to contact the county educator and myself, as the rates will need to be slightly adjusted in a graze out condition.
I'm Al Sutherland with your Mesonet weather report. Rain returned to our state this week, and in some locations the downpours were intense. The folks at the Oklahoma State Fair were hit with high winds and a lot of rain Tuesday evening. In the 10 minutes from 5:55 to 6:05, 7/10 of an inch of rain fell. Along with the rain came blasting wind gusting to a peak of 48 miles per hour. A 7-day map of rainfall from September 12th to the 18th shows that folks in the Panhandle and western Oklahoma finally had some decent rain amounts. In the 7 days this map covers, Kenton in the far west recorded 3 89/100, almost equal to the 3 95/100 recorded at Burbank in Osage County. Cheyenne came in with 2 59/100 inches of rain. Coming up short again were the folks in southwest Oklahoma along the Red River. The split in rain amounts is emphasized on a soil moisture map of 2-inch fractional water index from Tuesday. The dark green areas have excellent moisture and index values at 9/10 or 1. The dry brown areas had values of 1/10 or 0. Here's Gary with more on our recent rains and its drought impact.
Thanks, Al, and good morning, everybody. As usual, we're going to start out by talking about the newest U.S. Drought Monitor map. I'm very excited about this map because we've seen all that great rain out in western Oklahoma, especially the far western panhandle, and even Cimarron County is now down into the moderate drought category. And it's been a long time since those folks out there in the far western panhandle have seen that little of drought as the moderate category. Also, we see some improvements in west central Oklahoma, even some abnormally dry conditions, which is not even drought category, in parts of Roger Mills and Beckham County. So great news for those folks. Cimarron County, as we see from this map, at least since August 18th through September 18th, has seen widespread 3 to 5 inch rain amounts, even more in localized areas. So much rain that they even have water flowing in the Beaver River west of Boise City, which is indeed a rare sight. And we're going to show you that picture next. And this is thanks to the Cimarron County Conservation District folks. So we certainly appreciate them sending in that picture. It's great to see water running out in Cimarron County. Now this next map though, the percentage normal rainfall for August 18th through September 18th, basically the last month or so, we still see most of the state remain from 60% to as little as 20% and even less than that of normal for that period. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
Joining us once again to talk about research is Bob Wedeman, a Regents Professor here at Oklahoma State University. Bob, let's talk about feed efficiency.
One of the important things in beef production is the amount of feed that's necessary to maintain a cow herd. About 70% of the feed needed for beef production is associated with that which the cows eat. One of the things that we think is important is if there's a way that we can identify cows that are more efficient. Cows are like people. Some are more efficient and can store their fat better than others. Can we identify cows that are more efficient so that we can select those animals to decrease the cost of maintaining the cow herd?
All right, so what are you doing to find those efficiencies?
One of the things we're looking at is to determine how much feed is required to maintain a cow when she's pregnant, to try to look at, can we look at animals that require less feed? Up to this point of time, when we individually feed cows, we've seen that those animals that are more efficient require about 30% less feed every day than those animals that are less efficient. And so what we'd like to do is to find biomarkers or some type of measurement we can make on animals so that we don't have to individually feed every cow to determine which is more efficient, but we can actually take a blood sample, take a tissue sample, or some other measurement that will allow us to identify those more efficient cows.
All right, so how far are you along as far as identifying things that producers can actually put into action?
One of the things that we've seen is that animals that are more efficient have altered thyroid function. Thyroid controls the rate of metabolism in all animals, and so if we can identify animals by altered thyroid function, this might be one step. We're quite a ways away from the final answer yet. Probably it's going to be a number of factors, maybe other hormones, maybe expression of some genes that will allow us to look at those animals that are more efficient. The important thing is, I think, that we recognize that this variation does exist, and so what we have to do is to find a way that we can identify those animals that are more efficient.
All right, so in the meantime, what can producers be doing with the herd they have right now?
Well, for a number of years, we've looked at the role of body condition and how to manage our animals to meet required body condition. Our work 25 and 30 years ago established that if spring calving cows calf with a body condition score of 5, we will get adequate reproductive performance. And so what we can use this as a very important tool to meet the needs of the animal. We can observe cows and feed them to calves of 5 so that we'll have good reproductive performance. Fall calving cows, usually not a problem because they have summer grass, and so they're usually in 6 or 7 body condition score at the time of calving. However, what we need to make sure is those fall calving cows, we need to make sure they maintain at least a 5 body condition score up through the breeding season in December and January. Otherwise, we'll have animals that don't become pregnant.
All right, good information as always. Bob Wedeman, research professor here at Oklahoma State University.
Continuing on the subject of livestock, over the years, the Master Cattleman's program has helped thousands of producers improve their operations. The next OSU Extension Master Cattleman Summit is set for October 11th and 12th in Stillwater. In addition to expertise in genetics and finances, a good part of the hands-on training will focus on forage.
3 of the highlights of the Master Cattleman Summit will revolve around grazing management. So one workshop will be improving ranch productivity through grazing management. Another feature is a workshop on fencing, which we've not done before. And then a third feature relative to grazing will be water systems, both permanent and mobile water systems for grazing livestock.
The 2-day Master Cattleman Summit is $30. We've set up a link on our website to help you register.
Hi, welcome to Shop Stop. Today we want to talk about drilling a hole with a drill press into a smaller piece of metal.
So if you've got a piece of sheet metal and you want to hold it, obviously you can clamp it down, but if you're going to do multiples or you want to have something that you can just rig up real quick, well, here's a quick little jig that you can put together.
You can make one of these pretty easy, cut 4 slots in it, a small handle on it, and then just use some wing nuts to basically can slide in these the slots, holds the piece in place while you can drill your hole through it. It's not going to grab it out of your hand and throw it across the shop and hurt someone. So
there you go. There's a quick way to make a little jig to keep from slicing your hand up on your drill press and hold your small piece of sheet metal for you.
We'll see you next week on Shop Stop.
Kim Anderson, our grain marketing specialist, joins us now. And Kim, let's begin today looking at prices.
Prices have been grinding lower for both corn and wheat, especially over the last 2-3 weeks. Now at the end of this week, wheat prices were substantially higher. And you know, it's really, you know, the market's been dead when a 10-cent to a 15-cent price rally, the market gets excited. Now, I think part of that reason may be because the Fed announced that it was going to extend the QE program, that's buying bonds. That has the potential to cause inflation, and when you have the potential for inflation, buyers tend to come to commodities, and that may be happening here. But you can look at wheat export demand, export sales in this marketing year for all wheat, 38% above last year. Hard red winter wheat, 32% above last year. Soft red winter wheat, 210% above last year. So we've had good demand to give us, build up and then maybe give us the price rally, and maybe we'll hold that.
Okay. Looking at some of the other news in the markets, corn harvest is getting underway. How's the crop looking?
Well, it's the beginning of harvest. They say it's starting to go relatively strong. The yields are above expectations. Test weights are relatively good. You can look at that corn December contract on the Chicago Board of Trade. It's got $4.50, maybe $4.48, but the market's watching that $4.50 level. The prices are close to that level. Little rally at the end of the week. We'll just have to see what happens. We're expecting more price pressure as that market moves on north. However, we've got good pent-up demand from the feedlots and the feed mills for the corn and their early buyers.
Okay. In terms of positive news, what are you looking at?
Soybeans. We've had a $2 rally in beans over the last month or so. the production expectations continue to decline. Soybean stocks are expected to be as tight as they were last year, and they were very tight at the end of this last year. Had good demand for beans on the export market. Brazil is, some reports is their stocks are essentially gone, and so the United States is the one in the market. There's concern about beans, but that's the positive look. And on price-wise, it's positive that we had that little rally at the end of the week on wheat.
Okay. With all this in mind, your advice at this time for investors?
Well, I think the best advice I got was from Peter McKeegan from Top Third Marketing. He said, you don't short a sleeping market, and I think corn and wheat have both been sleeping markets, and they've been building a floor for some time. Now, I don't expect a big price rally out of corn and wheat, but I think right now there's probably a little more higher odds for upside price, higher prices for wheat and corn than there is lower prices.
Okay, keep an eye on it for all of us. We'll see you again next week. Thanks, Kim.
For the eastern two-thirds of Oklahoma, we've been fortunate enough this summer to actually get moisture and therefore grow some forage. Many producers have put up a lot of big round bales in preparation for winter feeding, as well as having the standing grass available for those cows, this in the late summer, early fall period. That is a reminder to me to think about a concept of cow nutrition. It's called the positive associative effect. What do I mean by that? Well, if those cows are just consuming a relatively low quality roughage, such as we might see in late fall or winter, or some low quality hay, then as they consume that, it's much more difficult for the rumen to break it down and digest it than if those same cows consuming that same hay are supplemented with additional protein. And that's what we mean by the positive associative effect. Experiment was done here a number of years ago at Oklahoma State that basically fed one group of cows only 1 3/4 pounds of a high protein supplement while they were consuming some low quality grass hay. Their counterparts did not receive any of the protein supplement. What we saw was a tremendous difference in the digestibility of that hay. And it shows up in the retention time, the amount of time that hay stays in the rumen before it's actually passed on down the rest of the digestive tract. Those cows that got the protein supplement, that hay was digested and turned over, if you will, in something less than in 18 hours less than the cows that were consuming the hay without the protein supplement. So the retention time was reduced by 32%. Because of that, then the cows that received the protein supplement could consume considerably more of that forage to digest. And in this particular study, the increase was 27%. So, as we're going through this fall and winter period with spring calving cows, a little protein supplement, only 1 3/4 pounds per head per day of a high protein supplement, goes a long ways to increasing the digestibility, therefore the amount of energy that those cows get out of the hay. It's going to be important that we have adequate forage available for the cows if we use this kind of a concept. If forage is unavailable, we're very, very short on grasses and hay supplies, then we have to look at a more expensive, higher energy, lower protein supplement that's fed in a lot larger amounts. But this concept of a positive associative effect using a high protein supplement while the cows are receiving an adequate amount of low quality forage will really help us and help those cows gain body condition and be ready for next year's calving season. We look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
September is National Preparedness Month, a time to plan for any number of possible emergencies. SUNUP's Austin Moore shows us a way to gear up without ever leaving your house.
Disasters can happen on a grand scale, such as tornadoes wiping out entire neighborhoods. Or they can be highly localized, such as a single home fire. Regardless, we can take time now to make sure the days after a disastrous event are as painless as possible.
It's not enough to say, yeah, I'll get ready someday. The most important thing is to get ready today. Now we're standing here, it's blasting hot, we're in the full sun. That doesn't mean that today is not a great day to get ready for a disaster, because any day is a great day.
We followed Oklahoma Cooperative Extension's Gina Peak as she helped a local homeowner build a disaster preparedness kit out of items already in the home.
And what we also suggest is that you include canned goods with a lot of liquid in them. So, for example, if you have fruit that is canned in its own juice, that's a really great fit, because if you're thirsty, you can drink that juice. A lot of the stuff that you need for a kit, such as food, clothing, a basic first aid kit, you probably already have in your home. So the idea is to look through your own house, find out what you have already, shop in your own home basically, put those things together in a kit.
And here's some salmon.
Perfect.
Tomatoes are full of liquid.
Yep,
I mean, they're one of the best sources of veggies for liquids. Do you want me to pull up 3 days worth?
Yeah, absolutely. I see there's a can of soup there with a pop top.
Yep.
Now what's important about that pop top is that you don't need a can opener to open that.
Right.
Whereas with these other canned goods that you're handing over, you're going to need a can opener to get these
Right.
open. So that's something important to think about. You want to be able to have enough stuff to help you survive for 3 days. So you don't have to be comfortable, you're not going on vacation, but you're going to need a change of clothes for 3 days. You're going to need something to eat for 3 days, any kind of specialized medications, anything you require for 3 days, and some kind of a weather radio to help you stay alert.
Peak suggests that we change out the contents of the kit twice a year. At the same time, we reset our clocks for daylight savings time, putting in fresh foods and clothing appropriate to the coming season.
This is where I would probably just grab this little container and go.
Now that's something that we'll talk about. One of the things that you might consider is, let's say there are a few things that you can only grab at the last minute. For you, prescription drugs might be one of them. Let's say you don't have 3 days worth of medicine that you can set aside. You can identify those 3 things and grab them at the last minute. So this might be one of them. Cell phone and cell charger might be one.
Okay.
And then cash.
Okay.
So the idea is that at the very last moment, you would grab something that you really can't put in your kit.
Peak is challenging Oklahomans statewide to build a disaster preparedness kit for each member of their family.
You can go to the county office and get a pledge, which is basically a list of all of the stuff to put in a kit. And then once you've created the kit, you'll sign a certificate. We're going to count the number of certificates that we collect, and the goal is 500 by the end of this year.
You can also get a copy of this pledge on the SUNUP website, sunup.okstate.edu.
The summer months are a great time to go into a forest stand and to mark trees that we want to remove for a timber stand improvement. This is because with leaves on, it's a lot easier to identify the species of tree. Also, you might want to look at mass-producing trees, those acorn-producing trees, in late summer, and see which ones are good mass bearers and which ones are not. Because not all oaks are created equal. Some oaks will produce the vast majority of the acorns in a stand. So you might want to remove some of those trees that aren't producing as many acorns. Also, red cedar is one that we can remove. It has very little benefit for most wildlife species in a forested stand. But the point of all this is we want to create more resources for the remaining trees to produce more mass for wildlife. By creating forest gaps, we're going to allow sunlight onto the forest floor, and we're going to get a lot of herbaceous growth that wildlife can utilize. Beneficial plants like greenbrier, pokeweed, sunflowers will really do well in forests once there's some sunlight. And you can see around me all the herbaceous forage and all the browse plants that are coming up in this gap. Now there's different ways to create these sunlight patches in the forest. If you're in an area where you have a marketable timber resource, you can just hire a consulting forester to mark your timber stand and to cut the trees for actually commercial harvest. If you're in cross timbers or some other part of the state where there's not a good commercial market, then you can either just cut the trees and leave them lay, or you can inject them with a herbicide, or you can ring them with the chainsaw, or we can do prescribed fire to try to thin the forest. But whatever method you employ, we want to create some sunlight in the forest, increase herbaceous understory, diversity, and also to provide more resources for the remaining trees that you've decided to not harvest off that site. But all of these things in general will improve the diversity and the productivity of that forest for wildlife, particularly for white-tailed deer and wild turkey.
Finally today, a message about ag production methods that last for the long haul. A call for proposals is open for producer projects and on-farm research by professionals. It's all part of the Southern Region's Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Network, also known as SARE.
The idea is to always be making efforts towards improving the long-term profitability, productivity, and environmental stewardship of your production system. And so that's what SARE really is in Oklahoma. They provide professional development programming. That's what I do, is work with our county educators and NRCS folks to try to increase their awareness of some of the sustainable ag management systems. And then we also can work with producers.
Projects considered for grants need to be profitable, sustainable in terms of long-term productivity, and show environmental stewardship. If you have an idea that might qualify, call your local county extension office or go to sunup.okstate.edu. That'll do it for us this week. Remember, you can find us anytime on social media and our website, sunup.okstate.edu. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you next time at SUNUP.